Welcome to From the Trenches, success shortcuts revealed by real-world innovators crushing it right now. I'm your host, Scott Hartley, and we're back with another episode packed with actionable strategies from today's most successful entrepreneurs. If you're tired of generic business advice and ready for real cutting-edge tactics that are working right now, you're in the right place. Today, we're diving deep into how to speak with greater charisma and magnetism and overcome the fear of public speaking. So I'd like to introduce you to my guest. She is one of the most listened to voices in America. And although you've most certainly heard her voice, you probably don't know her name. It's Susan Berkley, and she's a top voiceover artist and the signature voice of Citibank, an internationally known leadership communications expert helping business leaders sell more of their services by deploying her 4 vocal influence types. She's also the author of The Persuasion Code and founder of greatvoice.com, and she's been featured on ABC News, CNBC, and in the New York Times. Susan, it's so great to have you here today.
Oh, it's a real pleasure, Scott. I'm a huge fan of your company and your services.
Thank you. I'm glad to have you in my sphere. And of course, we met through Brian Kurtz's Titans Mastermind. And it's been a great opportunity to get to know you. And not too long ago, you actually talked about, your book that you've just released here and some of the things that we're going to talk about today. So kind of would like to dive right in because what you do, helping people become confident when they're speaking to audiences, that fear ranks right up there at the top of the thing that most people are afraid of anytime that they have to speak. So I'd love to kind of like hear your journey, how you kind of got into the public speaking realm and kind of share some advice with our listeners today.
Oh, it'd be my great pleasure, Scott. So I'm a former radio personality. I was
Okay.
on the air for 15 years at a variety of different radio stations around the country and ended my radio career on the Howard Stern show, where I was his traffic reporter
Oh,
for a couple
wow.
of years. Yeah, in the late 80s. And from there, I really had a dream to start my own business and do voiceover work, which it pays a lot more money than radio does.
Right.
So although it was a lot of fun, I was kind of at the top of my game. I quit radio and started my own company as a freelance voiceover artist and became the voice of AT&T and then the voice of Citibank, where people can hear me saying, "Welcome to Citi Phone Banking. Your account balance is $1 million." If you
That's
know me, we
awesome.
work a little something out, right?
Right.
So, so I am that voice, and I do a lot of different voiceover things, but I also teach and train people who want to get into voiceover, which is
Okay.
where you and I met one another, and public speaking as well, which I'll get to in a second. But we have a really large group of people that we help and teach who want to do voiceover on the side, and they're mostly people who are on what I call the runway to retirement. And to
Hmm.
them, this seems like a really great thing to do, a home-based opportunity, and it is. So
Yeah.
I'm honored that we've literally, I sell a book called Voiceover Secrets Exposed, and I'm honored that I've literally sold almost 20,000 copies of that book.
Wow, that's
So
awesome.
yeah.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. And so those customers are all over the country, and we have a great time helping them. But I also help entrepreneurs, business owners, salespeople with their persuasive speaking skills.
Hmm.
So, because I have such a background being able to sell with my voice as a voice talent and being on the radio for so many years, I said to myself one day, what is it that we do that gives us the ability to open our mouths and sell a product in 60 seconds? And
Mm.
not just sell it, but make our customers millions of dollars worth of millions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
Based on how we read the scripts. It's only 150 words, but we have that ability. So I
Hmm.
sat down and I kind of deconstructed it and formed a method, which I call voice shaping, and how we use our pitch, our tone, our inflection, but even more, what the inner game is that allows us to project charisma, magnetism, and get out of our own ways. And this is what I teach my high level business coaching people and the entrepreneurs that I work with because they're very skilled in what they do.
Hmm.
Extreme, they're at the top of their game. But
Yeah.
often when they have to get on camera, like everyone does these days to promote their products and services, they come across as a little, maybe boring is a strong word, but they just don't have the spark. Or
Right.
internally, they don't feel comfortable
Hmm.
speaking one-to-one to their prospects and their customers, which is what we do when we're on camera, we're on mic. I don't know if you realize this, Scott. We talk to one person at a time. Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, even though we may be presenting to a group, this is something I always try to keep in the back of my mind is that I'm focused on that person that I'm looking at or the next person. And, that we're really having that conversation with one individual, even though we may be speaking to a room of 5,000.
Yeah. And that's really the starting point for charisma and magnetism. Because
Mhm.
what happens when a person becomes nervous, as so many people do, it's one of the biggest, most well-known fears, the fear of public speaking.
Yep.
And what's really going on is people start to get stressed out and stress hormones liberate in their body like adrenaline, noradrenaline, and those that cause all those scary symptoms like dry mouth, beating heart, thought blocking, and all of those things. So in my work, I help people get to the root of why that happens. And I found there are two things, okay? Number one is the nervous speaker is hyper focused on themselves. And the thoughts that go through their head are like, what if I mess up? How do I look? What if people notice my voice a weird way or my accent? It's all about me, I,
Hmm.
rather than this thing we were just talking about, focusing on that one person that they're communicating with. So I've done a lot of platform speaking, a lot of public speaking, even to groups that I'm not familiar with. So the
Hmm.
first thing I always do, and I always help my people do, is really do a deep dive in who's in the room. And it could be a digital room, it can be a live room, could be on camera. But
Hmm.
who's our avatar? Who is that one person I'm talking to? What are their hopes? What are their dreams? What's keeping them up at night? And that's really the foundation for any marketing piece. I'm assuming there are a lot of entrepreneurs and marketers watching this or listening to me right now,
Sure. Yeah.
because a copywriter would never dream of putting fingers to keyboard without really analyzing and researching the audience. And the ones that are the best, the top copywriters, boy, they have focus groups. They call people with the health issue if they're writing a health package. And so that's the kind of detailed research or we need to do. We didn't really focus on that person and how they're in pain or what are their joys, what are their hopes, so that when it's our moment to get in front of them digitally or in person, all thoughts of ourselves go out the window.
Hmm.
Which is not to say that there isn't stagecraft. There is. There are trips, tips, and techniques, and I can talk about that in a moment. But I think the starting point for every presentation is really the other person, and that will eliminate a lot of this anxiety that people feel. Because what happens, Scott, is that our energy, our magnetism, our charisma is not for our own aggrandizement. It's
Hmm.
meant to be shared.
Yeah.
And when we don't share it, it's almost like we're creating a feedback loop and we're almost frying our neurons a little bit because it's not normal, it's not natural. Any gift we've been given is meant to be shared. I'm talking about your talents, your abilities, your business, what you've developed. And you put a ton of time into it. It's all for all of us, especially we entrepreneurs. It's our life's work.
Hmm.
So you need to think deeply about why you're here and what you have to share and just focus on that. And that helps take some of the pressure off of yourself because it's almost like an energetic feedback loop it's just not healthy for us. And the result is all of this anxiety that people feel when they have to speak.
Yeah,
So
and
does that
I've
make
seen,
sense?
yeah, and I've seen this transformation. So I'm part of a local group where we have high school juniors and seniors. It's called Gibson County CEO. So we
Uh-huh.
teach them principles of entrepreneurship. They start their own business. Many of these high schoolers, they've never really interacted with other business leaders. And so at the beginning of their time in this class, they're very timid, they're very shy, and they're just like afraid to go and speak to somebody, or let alone present to even their peers in this class. But as we teach them some of these things that you've been sharing, like, don't worry about yourself, focus on what benefit you're going to bring to the people that are listening to you. Throughout the year, you can just see that total transformation, and how they blossom, how they come out of their shell, and they're more confident when they're speaking with others. And so, like, all of the, I love how you say, take the focus off of ourselves and what can we bring to the people that are listening to us.
Yes, and how wonderful you're working with young people because you've changed their lives once they've started to do that. That's a lifelong thing that they'll be able to develop.
Yeah.
So it's the speaker's responsibility to be understood. That's another maxim I think that people need to think about. It's not if people don't understand you in the room, and I don't mean just what you're saying in your diction and your articulation, although that is important,
Hmm.
but I mean if they're not getting your message, uh, it's your responsibility to really find a way to get through to them.
Yeah.
And that could be, again, it comes back to the research of who's in the room, using humor, having stories ready, having anecdotes, giving examples that are colorful and vibrant that make your
Hmm.
points, not giving too much information. That's a white paper.
Right.
Right? When we get in front of people, we shouldn't seek to be the encyclopedia or the library of the topic. That's
Hmm.
horrible. That's boring. But we should think of what are the top 2, 3 points that we can deliver and make them rich and meaningful for our
Hmm.
audience. So
Yeah.
that's the first problem is what, and it's even got a name in psychopathology. It's called narcissism. That's such a loaded term, but what that
Right.
really is a focus on ourselves instead of we're not in dialogue with the other person and on the audience or reality even sometimes because
Hmm.
speakers can get caught up in their head about like they're supposed to be presenting and all of a sudden their mind is a million miles away and they can't control their thoughts, right? So
Yeah.
that's thing number one. The second thing is the feeling like the audience is out to get me. The audience is my enemy somehow. There's that guy in the third row that, he knows me. He's looking at me funny. There's three people in the back of the room looking at their phones. They're not paying attention. I know they hate me. I know they're criticizing me, all of that stuff. That's a problem called paranoia. And it's actually very common because what happens is that um, the speaker is super self-critical
Hmm.
when they are not feeling comfortable, and then they get into like a whole mental loop about, oh man, if I only did this, or I'm not that, or I don't know this or that about my subject. And then what happens is they start to project that onto the audience. But the source of the problem is really them. It's really internal. And this is normal. Everybody does this. Everybody. The problem of projection is a
Hmm.
human problem. And at its worst leads to war, right? But
Right.
fights, strife among people. So I think a good gut check whenever anyone gets in front of an audience is to think about for a second, do you feel that perhaps they're critical people I mean, there's always a jerk in the audience, but you want to put your attention on them and
Yeah.
not on the people that really, really want to benefit from what you have to say. So
Mhm.
this problem of projection, the audience is my enemy or out to get me, is really even a little bit, I think everybody needs to do an analysis of their soul, before they speak, to think about if there's any of that, because, and then be a friend to the audience. And so that loops back to my initial thing. How did we prepare to
Mhm.
present our presentation? Did we go the extra mile to really understand them, to bring them something delightful, entertaining, or some knowledge or information that is, if not funny, but is it presented clearly? Is it presented in a way with examples that maybe before other people haven't been able to do, and people have been, fogging people's brains with too much information, too many charts and diagrams. So I think if those two things will really, really help speakers improve their effectiveness and feel a lot better about communication and want to do more of it. It's the number one thing that'll build and grow any business.
Yeah. And one of the things that I found that I try to do more of whenever I'm communicating with people, whether it's a one-on-one type of setting, like you and I are having a conversation and I'm trying to explain a point, is what analogies can I use? What stories, like you mentioned, because that helps us relate it to something that we already are familiar with, right? Especially if we're trying to explain something that maybe is kind of a concept that most people wouldn't understand, or maybe it's kind of complex. And then when you mentioned, when you're speaking to an audience, I think would it be a good idea to kind of like survey the room, look around the room as you're presenting and look at the facial expressions to kind of see, are people getting it? Are they understanding what I'm saying? And then that can kind of be a clue to like, oh, okay, I need to figure out another way to kind of present this information. Would that be an effective way to do that?
That's a great suggestion. And it's when we're speaking to sell, which I do every single week. I run a webinar every week where we're selling the course of the month. We throw in what we call trial closes.
Mm,
So a trial close is actually a question to the audience. And you can do this on Zoom very well because they come in the chat and I'll say, is that making sense? Are you guys tracking with me here? Come in the chat, say yes, or say hell yeah, or whatever you do, like you're encouraging them to interact with you. And if you're in front of them face to face, you can absolutely do the same thing. Are you
yeah,
guys tracking with me? Raise your hand. Or now you don't necessarily want to ask for questions because they can derail a presentation. You wait
sure.
until the end, right? Or if you're going
Yeah.
to ask for that at all. But absolutely, that's just one more wonderful way to make sure you're engaging with people
Hmm.
and the audience is with you. And
Yeah.
there are times where you have to speak after bad news or in a bad time. I mean, as we record this, it's election day 2024. Yeah, I think people have a lot on their mind right now.
Right.
So
And
this
it's
would
right after
not
lunch as
be
well. So,
well, so you have to read the room. You have to be sensitive to what's in the air and what's going on. And that, to me, that's the fun of it,
yeah.
because I think there's a canned speech is a pretty horrible thing. Like a speech you give many times is great. It's a framework, but
Mhm.
always customize it to your audience and who's in the room.
Yeah. Now, a question that I've got that just kind of popped into my mind as you were talking there. So let's say that you're doing, a live presentation. You're on a stage. You've got somebody who's introduced you. They've read your intro. They've, introduced you to the audience. What's kind of your top recommendations for opening up your presentation or opening up your speech? What are some do's and don'ts?
Always open with a story and make them laugh.
Okay.
Always. So I'll often, when I speak, and it's been since the pandemic, man, the opportunities to speak live have been diminished, which I love speaking live. I have zero fear of public speaking. I just would do it all day and night. But I I'll often open a presentation and I'll say, yeah, I am the voice that says, welcome to Citibank. And my dad used to be a Citibank customer, and he once um, was at a business luncheon and he paid with a Citi card and the card was declined. So not a problem. He pulled out cash, took care of it, no problem. But when he got back to the office, he called the bank and got my voice saying, your card has been declined. Do not use your card. And he told me he was yelling at the phone going, but Susan, it's dad. You know I'm good for the money. And all I could say was, your card has been declined. Do not use your card. So I always get laughs from an
Yep.
audience when I tell that story. It's fun and it's unique and it's mine.
Yeah.
So you should have stories, many stories that are kind of in your back pocket, anecdotes, practiced for timing and for pacing and for vocal intonation and all of that.
Hmm.
And there's no harm in trotting them out and using them over and over again and testing new ones
Yeah.
uh, all the time.
Yeah. What's a couple of I've got a couple of things in my mind, and I'm just kind of curious, like what's a couple of things that you've seen speakers do whenever they first get introduced and then they go out onto the stage that you would say, no, absolutely don't do
Okay. Thanking the audience is the worst way to thank yous, like a litany of thank yous. Thank you, Mr. Introducer, and thank you to all of you sitting here today. I know you had other things to do rather than come and listen. I know, yeah, maybe your boss required you, all of that. Just dispense
that.
with that. Tell a story, get right into the meat of the subject,
Hmm.
tell why you're there, have some fun, tell them what, and the old advice about tell them what they're going to hear, tell them and tell them what you told them. I think that's great because
Hmm.
that helps create a framework so
Yeah.
that the audience will know what's in it for me, why they should pay attention, and all of that stuff. So that's one mistake is the thank yous. You can absolutely dispense with that. It's understood. Another mistake I see people make, and it might not be necessarily at the beginning, but it's turning their back and reading from the PowerPoint, for God's sake.
Oh,
Don't
yeah.
do that. So have have, in some situations, like if you're in a big ballroom, sometimes they have a monitor
Hmm.
that's in front of you. That's great. That mirrors your laptop or whatever. But always have a backup, have your stuff on cue cards, index cards. So you can like glance at like bullet pointed on your on index cards, small
Yeah.
ones. You can hold in your hand, just glance down so you can refresh it, so you can have your eyes up a lot. Walk around. I always walk around if
Yeah.
I could, as I walk into the audience, but I walk around the stage. And then when I have points that I want to make, I'll stop and I'll fix the audience. Now, that's what's important is you don't stare people down and you divide the rooms into 4 quadrants. So
Hmm.
you're speaking here, 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 here. Otherwise, people go, wait, what about us over here? Like, what's wrong with us? You're just, so
Right.
you want to make sure you're capturing the entire audience with your energy
Hmm.
and you're dividing it equally. So the PowerPoint is a horrible, terrible mistake. If I can ever speak without one, I do because I think they're evil. I think they're
Hmm.
really it's a crutch for the speaker. So
Yeah.
PowerPoint's great when you use them, images and very few words.
Hmm.
Images that illustrate your point and very few words. Um, if there's data, find the simplest way to just explain it on a PowerPoint, maybe have somebody help you design it, but don't let them go crazy, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And plenty of great books out there about how to do it, but people go insane with the PowerPoint also.
Yeah,
They
they have their
really,
entire
uh,
presentation on it that they literally
oh,
don't even need to be on stage. They could just run
yeah,
the
what's the
PowerPoint.
point?
People can read it, right?
Good point. Really good point. There's a Edward Tufte wrote a great book called The Visual Display of Information, and he made that point really strongly. He was like, listen, if it's put it in a white paper and give people the paper and let the PowerPoint just very short words and images.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Great. These are some awesome tips. What would you kind of give some suggestions for people who obviously since the pandemic, we're in the Zoom era. So most people are doing, sales calls or other types of meetings over
everything.
Zoom. What are some of your best tips for helping to leverage Zoom in the most powerful way for the different
Yeah, it's great.
conversations?
It's lovely. It's lovely that we're face to face right now on this
Yeah.
podcast because it helps me get a sense of you. And I think you get a better interview out of the
Yeah.
person you're interviewing. But so Zoom, first of all, know where the camera is and look at it. But second, understand that microphones and cameras eat energy. So we need to be an enhanced version of ourselves.
Hmm.
So you need to really amp up the energy level. It looks like you might be standing right now at a
Yep.
standing desk. I don't know, but that helps a lot.
Yeah.
Straight posture, use your hands. Um, where there are all the things about what you should wear. Keep your clothing simple and colorful and bright. Be aware of your background. I think those background images are nice if like sometimes your room is a mess, but you have to be careful because it looks like you're moving into another dimension, right?
Right.
All of a sudden your hand disappears, your face becomes all weird. So I'd be mindful of all of that. But I think people have got zoomed down right now. They just need to give some thought, maybe have a friend take a look at what their setup is. Always get your camera updated, have a separate outboard microphone. I never wear headphones when I do
Yeah.
Zoom. I don't, people have those earbuds in,
Yeah.
okay. So
Or the
it's
ones that actually, the actual
big, like,
headphones where they're,
yeah, I
over
mean,
their head and
it doesn't, why, they think it's cool and they all,
yeah.
so I would put some thought into the aesthetics of it. I really would, because it's our work environment. You wouldn't invite someone into a messy office, or maybe you don't care, but the aesthetics matter.
Yeah.
Um, how we, it really, I think it says a lot about, it helps us. I mean, if I'm in a messy environment, if I'm in an unaesthetic speaking situation, I'm not going to be as comfortable. It
Hmm.
helps elevate us.
Yeah. One of the things that annoys me the most is when I'm on a call and the other person doesn't turn their camera on. So I'm just
Yeah,
facing myself when I'm on the Zoom. And of course, I
yeah,
feel like I'm having a conversation with myself, and that's just so awkward, even though
yeah,
like I know that I've got this other person on there, but it's just a black screen that maybe has their name,
yeah.
listed.
So we're having this conversation. I'm looking, I'm like, oh my goodness, my background's really ugly. It's like some photo paper hanging behind me, but I didn't know we were going to be on camera, but that's okay. Have at it.
Most
Don't
most
judge me.
everybody's going to be listening to the audio anyway, so it's okay.
That's fine. Yeah. Because it could take some doing to really curate your background.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth the time.
Yep. So if somebody isn't really confident in, their presentation, and they've taken the advice and they've thought about, who is it that they're going to be speaking to? Who's their audience going to be? What are their needs? What are their pains? What am I going to bring to benefit with them? What are some practical exercises that you could recommend to people to become more comfortable in their own skin and maybe practice, their sales presentation or just their conversational skills?
Yeah. So it's kind of tough to practice on your own without another human being.
Hmm.
Because, like I was saying earlier, I don't think enough is said about this give and take of energy, transfer of energy between the audience and the speaker.
Hmm.
So, practicing into a mirror never worked for me because it reinforces that narcissism that I was telling you about, that all of us
Hmm.
have. Because
Yeah.
you're that feedback, it reinforces that. So I think the best way to practice is to look for any way, any place or any way to give your material online
Hmm.
to a live group like you did. You went with work with a bunch of young people. I think that's
Yep.
incredible. I've done that. I volunteered at colleges and gone there to a bunch of like, they're like half asleep looking at their phones. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to get you guys awake and I'm going to practice with you because
Yeah.
I want to maybe test some new material or help you out or get a spark going.
Hmm.
And I think the best thing is even if it's to one person, find somebody somewhere that you can try your material out. And online is fine too. You can actually record yourself and put it up on YouTube, have a YouTube channel. Why not?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
practice in scripting, and then there's the whole thing, am I reading a script? Do I have uh, am I reading from a teleprompter? Or am I not reading a script and just working off of bullet points, all of that stuff. So
Mhm.
those are two different scenarios. Often when I work with the financial advisors that I help at a very high level, they are actually doing video sales letters. They're reading off of, or they're doing a webinar where their millions of dollars are at stake.
Yeah.
Like these are for a top financial newsletter company.
Hmm.
So literally they're selling a thing, a $5,000 thing, and millions of dollars are invested to get the audience and millions of dollars are made. So
Yeah.
they better be darn good. So we go through the script. I give them tips from thinking of my book, The Persuasion Code, which in a moment I'm going to tell you how to get a free copy of, making sure they're using their voice in an interesting manner to deliver the best points. But above all, making sure that even though there's a script, who's on the other side of that script? And I
Hmm.
always start whenever I work with the entrepreneurs and experts to get an avatar. Who's that one person that personifies their customer?
Hmm.
Who's that one person? And sometimes they've met them at a conference, but sometimes we have to kind of merge two people
Hmm.
to make one person that would personify them.
Yeah, it's interesting that you've gone back to, the whole avatar thing. So a lot of the interviews that I've done so far on this podcast, many of those have come back to you need to know who your customer is. You need to know who your audience is. And that's something that's really been impressed upon me, really for the over the past year, is helping people get clear on who they're trying to reach. Because
Mhm.
without that, like everything else in business, is probably not going to be as effective as it could be.
No.
And
You know,
it's
so
great to hear you say that, when it comes to the speaking part of it.
So you and I have done, because I'm a customer of yours and a very satisfied customer because we invest thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on AdWords and on
Hmm.
Google influence. So we're heavy email marketers at my company,
Yeah.
and our inbox is like the gateway to our business, you know? So we're
Yep.
the inbox, the customer inbox. So, and we have copywriters, I have copywriters I hire and all that stuff. So a lot of time and thought and energy is invested into that. But having started my business, I remember you don't always know who your avatar is. You have to test your way into it. I
Hmm.
was very surprised to discover how many retirees were interested in our voiceover training opportunity. That was a
Yeah.
huge surprise to me. I thought it would be, oh, actors, radio people. Not
Hmm.
at all. It's
Really?
people who are at the end of they're either about to retire or they're at the end of their working life,
Hmm.
and they're thinking of starting a business because they did something with their voice earlier on, or they've spent their whole life with people telling them they have a great voice. So
Hmm.
that is something, and I can tell you more about them that we've discovered and over the years.
Yeah.
But then having to buy AdWords, so you obviously need to know who you're targeting, and we can
Yep.
refine that target today. So it's great because that one concept will help you not only be a better presenter, but be a better marketer. It all
Hmm.
goes together. And I loop back to I have a lot of friends who are top direct response copywriters, and I'm humbled by all the work that they do to
Hmm.
really understand their customer,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, it really is the crux of everything in business. And like you, once you nail that, then you can create those messages that really attract the people that you really want to serve and that you're able to serve. And so, just like all of those voiceover artists, getting clear on who they are. And like you said, you kind of stumble on it. Sometimes you
Yeah.
have this image and then you find out, like, no, it's really these people. But once you really get that nailed down, then it just explodes your business and opens up so many opportunities for you.
Yeah, and then you tell stories that relate to them, and you can hire people that relate to them better, that are more of
Hmm.
their type, you know,
Yeah.
so it just is one wonderful circle because it's how business is really supposed to be, I think. You know, you're not ever trying to take something from somebody. You need to
Right.
serve people. If you're gonna be successful, you have to really, you can't bamboozle anybody. You have to serve people and serve them at a higher and better level all the time.
Absolutely. Well, I know that you kind of teased us a few moments ago with your new book that you got. So tell us a little bit about the book and how people can get a copy of it.
Sure. I happen to have a copy here. It's called The Persuasion Code. This is a kind of a manual I wrote, which is on my website. I'm more than happy to give you guys a free download. So it's at susanberkley.com, and Berkeley is spelled Berkley, Berkley. Just go on over there and put your email in, and you'll get a PDF copy of this book, which has $1 million voice mastery secrets. I really explain about the 4 vocal influence types, what they are, how you can acquire them, how you can produce them. This is the stuff that I developed based on my work as a voiceover artist that I'm sharing with business speakers,
Oh,
and
awesome.
people love it. So it's, at susanberkley.com. I think you guys will enjoy it, and then we can stay in touch.
Fantastic. Yeah, go grab a copy of Susan's book. I got it, I think, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think, when you presented at the Titans Mastermind. Grabbed a copy of the book there. It is fantastic. It's a quick and
Oh, thank
easy
you.
read, which is
It
really
is.
nice, but it's
Yeah.
packed with great information that you can use and apply to your business.
Wonderful, Scott. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, that's all for today's episode of From the Trenches. Make sure that you go get your copy of Susan's book, The Persuasion Code, at her website, susanberkley.com. We'll also have the link in the show notes for you. And if you're looking to supercharge your email marketing, check out my book, Hit the Inbox, at hittheinboxbook.com. It's packed with 76 pages of strategies to get your emails landing in inboxes and driving sales. Thanks for tuning in today. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your favorite platform. It helps us reach more entrepreneurs like you. Until next time, keep crushing it in the trenches.